Hello, I'm Azai. Welcome back to the food Grisaia. I just took a short break, ate my food, did my prayer downstairs, and here I am, back again. There was actually a lot more stuff I wanted to say about last episode. Mostly about the fact that, damn, throughout the flashback on Sachi's story, I don't know if this is like a common thing or maybe it's just me and my own experiences that make me feel this way. But the topic of family has always been somewhat of a sore topic for me. And seeing someone having such a happy family like Sachi, and then it slowly developed into something, you know, well, technically Sachi's family wasn't that bad because they tried to clear off any misunderstandings very quickly in only just 1 year. They just had very bad luck that, you know, the dad died in an accident and the mom's basically in a coma. But I was actually really sad and also very envious of Sachi. The fact that she could have such a nice family like that. I don't remember much about what my family entails really, especially when I was that young, like when she was 5 years old. So, kinda got a bit melancholic when I was reading through it. I could understand her feelings quite well though, like wanting to work herself hard, wanting to be praised. To some degree, maybe I did that too as a kid. But the way I reacted is also a lot more different after my family started neglecting me. The neglect for sure happened to most kids once the family is a lot more well off financially. Like, I can't say I was ever in a bad financial spot in terms of money. But still, in terms of just the overall feelings of, you know, warmth and kindness that was supposed to be present in a family, I don't think I ever really felt that when I was younger. Sorry if I went on a tangent again. Seems I always do that whenever I play Grisaia lately. But let's continue. Hopefully Sachi feels better. Maybe I'm being a bit too optimistic. Oh, also, the fact that Sachi is basically Natsumi in a way when she met up with Yuji in the park. I guess my preferences when it comes to people that I really like never really did change because I really like Natsumi. And I really do like Sachi because of that. I guess I am those kids that are really gloomy as a kid. And even now, I still think that I'm one of those like people that are quite gloomy and I need someone to trudge me along.
So,
I wish one of these days I'll meet my own Sachan in the real world, but we'll see. 2 weeks after that horrible night, it had become my daily routine to turn aside the spoonfuls of food my nurses offered me. At night, when exhaustion overcame me, I was forced to relive the moment of my parents' accident over and over again. By now, I had completely lost the will to live. The nightmares didn't just play back my memories of that day. They caused me physical agony incomparable to any suffering I endured while awake. My appetite disappeared in a matter of days, and of course, I couldn't get any real rest. After about a week, my body had grown visibly frail, and my natural energy was replaced with lethargy and weakness. 2 days after a concerned nurse reported the situation to my doctor, he came to my bedside and asked me about a bunch of things. Can you hear voices from nowhere in particular? Can you see people who can't really be there? I'm pretty sure the questions were most likely like that. And for my answers, it took the doctor no time at all to announce that I was suffering from a specific illness. To summarize it in his words, a mental illness caused by temporary exposure to catastrophically intense stress. With that diagnosis, it became clear that I'd suffered my own wound in that accident, and my previously scheduled discharge from the hospital was postponed indefinitely. Not that my stay had produced any improvements so far. If anything, it was the opposite. The nightmare still tormented me relentlessly, and my treatment had progressed to medication in the IV tube. Through the tube, the nutrients I needed to survive were pumped directly into my veins. Through powerful sleeping pills, they induced temporary periods of oblivious rest. It felt less like I was living and more like I was being kept alive. One day, this stagnant routine was disrupted slightly. I learned that I had been given permission for an outing as part of a new phase of my treatment.
それじゃあ、あっちの方を歩いてみようか。
I was given permission to leave the hospital, escorted by one of the nurses, on the condition that we stayed well away from both my house and the site of the accident. With no particular destination in mind, we walked aimlessly around the town. Unlike the hospital, which was constantly filled with a sterile antiseptic scent, the town smelled of the season, of people living their ordinary lives. In the distance, I could hear the chattering of grade schoolers on their way home. For the first time in weeks, I wondered vaguely how my friends at school were doing. The change of pace wasn't unpleasant, but my feelings were as dark and clouded as ever. I knew all too well that the physical relief of this moment was only temporary. Unless a doctor drugged me into unconsciousness, I'd see that dream again. The moment of the accident would flash before my eyes over and over, and my body would react as if it were reality, twitching in my bed. If I wept in the dream, I woke up with my eyes swollen and red. If I screamed "stop" in the dream, I woke up with my throat rubbed raw. But worst of all, when the loop finally came to an end, my parents would raise their blood-covered faces from the road and curse me. An incessant, bitter rain of hateful words from which I was powerless to escape. Dad died instantly, and Mom lost consciousness soon after the accident. That last part of the dream was fake. I did understand that rationally, but every morning I awoke to find the burden of guilt resting slightly heavier in my mind. The border between reality and that cruel fiction grew indistinct. It felt entirely possible that horrible nightmare would stay with me for the rest of my life. I had committed the sin of disobedience. That dream was my punishment for treating my parents cruelly when they tried to celebrate my birthday with me.
もしそうなんだとしたら、私はこれからどうすればいいの？
It didn't matter how many times I apologized in my dreams. It didn't matter how much suffering those nightmares brought me. This guilt wouldn't simply disappear. It had already grown very nearly unendurable. My heart and mind were on the verge of breaking outright. And still, I couldn't find anything close to an answer.
誰か教えてよ。
And as I whispered that plea to myself, I noticed a parent and child walking slowly down the sidewalk toward us. A mother, her face clearly troubled, and her young son, yanking rudely at her hand.
ねえ、ママ、カツオマンの人形買ってよ。
Damn, you're a loud child.
だから、お人形はこの前買ったばかりでしょ。ああ、それでもカツオマンが欲しいの。ささみ怪人と戦わせるんだもん。もう、またそんなわがままを言って。いつまでも悪い子でいると、みんなマサヤのことが嫌いになって誰もいなくなっちゃうわよ。
The moment I heard those words, it was as though an icy hand had seized my heart.
やだ、そんなのやだよ。じゃあ、お人形は我慢しないとね。わかった。そうやってマサヤがいい子でいてくれれば、お人形もまた買ってあげるからね。
The mother and child passed by my side, their expressions completely transformed into smiles. I muttered those words under my breath as if to persuade myself they were true, and in the next moment, I thought I could hear a switch being flipped inside my head. After that episode, my body underwent a mysterious change. I went to bed that night without any sleeping pills, but nonetheless reached morning without seeing the nightmare. Since the dreams began, falling asleep without medication had always meant a night of terrible suffering. This sudden exception to the rule surprised me greatly. But I didn't really have any idea why the nightmares would have stopped all of a sudden. Maybe I had just happened to pull the lucky straw this once. As it turned out, however, these worries were unjustified. The nightmares grew steadily less frequent, and my physical condition improved as well. Observing these changes happily, a nurse told me to keep it up. Don't let those bad dreams come back. By way of encouragement, I promptly focused on engraving those words into my mind. Every time I whispered the mantra to myself, a voice rang out in my head. And when the voice fell silent, that scene flashed through my mind for the briefest of instants. As a warning, a reminder. I never, ever wanted to feel that way again. And so, I was determined to become a good girl. If I'm a good girl, I won't lose anything. If I'm a good girl, maybe Mommy and Daddy will forgive me someday. Over time, my mind was filled with those words. When someone asked me to finish my dinner, I cleaned my plate, even if it meant fighting back nausea to stuff food into my stomach. Before long, I was even capable of willing myself into unconsciousness if someone told me to go to sleep right away after lights out. Whenever I said those words and nodded my assent, the nurses called me a good girl with smiles in their faces. And whenever I heard that phrase, I could feel my sin growing ever so slightly lighter, my sense of self ever so slightly weaker. It took some time afterward, but eventually, I was discharged from the hospital, conditional on my return for thorough regular checkups. The reason, naturally, was that my painful nightmares had grown extremely rare, and my sleep and eating habits had returned to normal. The rapid and dramatic improvement in my symptoms did quite surprise my doctor and nurses, but I'm fairly sure the adults convinced themselves my little trip outside the hospital for a change of pace had simply succeeded beyond their expectations. However, the doctors did think it best for me to leave my hometown and the many painful memories it held behind. It was decided that I would live with my uncle Akihiro and his wife at their home in Niigata. I never visited my uncle's house even once until the day I moved there, but I didn't feel any anxiety about my new life in a new land. I did know that my uncle and auntie were kind people, and above all else, I had a clearly defined path to follow. No matter what my circumstances, I was determined to be a good girl. After all, my new conviction had virtually cured me of those unendurable nightmares. Since Uncle Akihiro was kind enough to carefully prepare everything beforehand, the move went off without a hitch. It was decided that I transfer into a nearby school after my first week in Niigata. As it turned out, it was a modestly sized school with a fairly small student body. I was the first transfer student in recent memory, and received a significant amount of curious gazes as a result. Heard she got caught up in something nasty. Didn't somebody say she got bullied really badly at her last school? At times, I heard such rumors whispered in the hallways. Not that any of it bothered me in the slightest. I was entirely focused on making up for the time I'd lost in the hospital. I hadn't even touched the textbook for some time. A good girl does well in school. So as to keep myself from diverging with that image, I threw myself fervently into my classes, filling every waking moment with study and regretting the need to sleep.
おめえすげえな。なんでそんげん勉強できるが？あっちで塾とか通ってたが？
塾には行ったことないけど、勉強は嫌いじゃないから。へえ、じゃあさちちゃんって頭がいいがね。
Damn, they have very strong accents.
じゃあ今度わからないところがあったら教えてくれさ。
わかった。
Over time, my diligent new approach to life changed the way my classmates viewed me. By the time we advanced to the next grade, many looked at me with respect in their eyes. In addition, on the theory that a good girl helps others, I would proactively approach those who seemed troubled and offer my assistance. Just by chasing after my ideal in this way, at some point, a crowd gathered around me. As at my previous school, everyone in the class started calling me Sachan, and I made lots of friends who'd invite me out to play. My uncle, who'd been worried about how I'd adapt to living in the country, was very pleased by all this. And my teachers offered consistent praise for my efforts in the classroom and helpful attitude. The harder I tried, the nicer everyone was, and I tried very hard indeed. The compliments and smiling faces reminded me of the happiest days of my life, when my parents had been kind to me. I grew steadily more convinced that my new way of thinking was correct. But such universal, unreserved affection for good people doesn't last beyond childhood. As if to warn me of that fact, when I advanced to the next level of school, I found the emotionally charged malice characteristic of adolescence waiting for me. After a few months, I'd gotten thoroughly settled in at my new school. Once again, I had attracted a crowd of friendly faces. For the most part, they asked to see my homework, for assistance in some extracurricular activity, or help with their studies. And as I reliably satisfied these requests, the number of people who approached me steadily increased. Apparently, there's this super talented saint in Class C 1C. Such rumors spread across the school, and I became something of a minor celebrity. And in time, I began to encounter those who found that irksome. Among them, a girl named Hitomi Nakano from my class. Most labeled her a delinquent, and she kept herself largely aloof from the rest of the class. So it came as something of a surprise when, one day, she suddenly called out to me.
ねえ小峰、今日の掃除当番変わってよ。
いいよ。
そう。じゃあお願いね。
It began with that trivial favor, no different from those I'd performed for countless others. But Hitomi Nakano repeated that request every time it was her turn to clean the classroom. Of course, I continued to readily accept. And one day, after this pattern had continued for some time,
小峰、今日もお願いね。
いいよ。どうかした？
あんたさ、毎回掃除当番変わらせられて、なんとも思わないわけ？
思わないけど、どこか変かな。
だってさ、私は明らかにあんたのことパシリにしてるんだよ。それっていじめじゃない？
いじめはいじめられる側に自覚があれば成立するって言われているけど、だとしたら私にその自覚はないからいじめじゃないんじゃないかな。
technically you're not wrong.
それ、本気で言ってんの？
だって人の言うことを聞くのがいい子で、聞かないのが悪い子でしょ。私はその考えに従ってるだけだから。
は？じゃあ何？あんた、私が永遠に掃除当番変われって言ったら 変わってくれるわけ？
中野さんがそう言うならそうするよ。
へえ、言うじゃん。じゃあさ、掃除当番は変わらなくていいから一人でこの学校の窓全部拭いて回ってみてよ。どう？できないでしょ。
いいよ。
Although I accepted Nakano-san's request, she didn't seem particularly pleased. In fact, she clicked her tongue in disgust and stalked right out of the classroom. What was she so angry about? Thinking the matter over, I took out a supply of cleaning implements from my locker. And just as directed, I made my way around the school, cleaning the windows. After our classroom, I moved on to the other first-year rooms, the hallway, and the faculty room, making steady progress. Once the school building was closed, however, my pace was slowed somewhat by the need to hide from the patrolling teachers. Nonetheless, I persevered at my task. Even after the sun fell, I continued wiping in dogged silence. Dogged? Dogged? My arms quickly grew heavier from the sustained effort of reaching up to clean the higher windows, and after a few hours, my shoulders were screaming with pain. Even so, I kept my hands moving. I had my directions, and I had to obey them. My personal circumstances were irrelevant. My body might ache or suffer injury, but neither mattered so long as it could move. If movement were to become impossible, I would simply reassess the situation and attempt to find an alternate means to accomplish my task. At the moment, wiping all of the windows in the school clean took priority above all else. When she found me in the hallway the next morning, still wiping windows, Hitomi Nakano's jaw dropped open.
あんた、何やってるの？
何って言われた通りに窓を拭いてるんだけど。
言われた通りにって、まさか本当にあれからずっと学校の窓を拭いてたわけ？
さすがに学校が広いから今日の授業が始まるまでにっていうのは無理だったけど、もう少し時間をもらえればちゃんと終わるから。
For a brief moment, her eyes went wide, and in the next, she roared with laughter.
あんた、間違いなくいい子だよ。それは私が保証してあげる。
ありがとう。
お礼まで言って、こいつ本物だわ。
Oh, sorry.
小峰、窓拭きはここで終わりでいいわよ。
そうなの？
ええ、その代わり今日からあんたは私の奴隷になりなさい。
わかった。
やっぱりね。じゃあこれから私に対しては敬語を使うこと。それから私が何か命令をした時の返事ははい、わかりました。いい？
はい、わかりました。
そうそう、それでいいじゃん。えらいえらい。
ありがとうございます。
I didn't particularly hesitate at the prospect of becoming a slave. If that was what she wanted from me, and if it was within my power to play that role, I had no reason to object. And so, having assumed the position of Hitomi Nakano's obedient minion, carrying out her orders became the central element of my new daily routine.
小峰、あとはよろしくね。
はい、わかりました。
I can't quite remember how many times we repeated this exchange. It happened too often for me to be sure. My more common duties involve completing her homework by proxy, helping her cheat on tests, and arranging cruel pranks against those she disliked. There were other requests as well. Every once in a while, she'd call for me in the middle of the night simply to mock me for actually showing up. After laughing with her friends, she would send me right back home. But that was all right with me. I was her slave, so all I needed to concern myself with was executing her commands. No matter how difficult the orders she gave me, through careful thought and diligent effort, I would always find a method of carrying them out. When I succeeded, her mood would often improve. On occasion, she would offer a few words of praise for her good girl. But more than anything else, simply obeying someone's instructions was pleasant in itself. While executing her orders, there was no need to think about anything else. The reason for those orders, the consequences of successfully carrying them out, anything and everything else was totally irrelevant. In those moments and those moments alone, the burden of guilt I carried with me was lifted from my shoulders, and the image I wanted to erase from my mind more than anything else stayed safely buried away. Therefore, there was nothing wrong about this. A good girl does what she's told. I believed absolutely in those words. For me, they had become a kind of faith. However, not everyone saw things the same way. After about 2 years as her slave, my master began to show some signs of discontentment with our arrangement. When I answered her orders with a prompt "yes, certainly" and a nod, I could see a flash of irritation in her eyes. Perhaps as a result, I soon noticed that those orders had begun to escalate in scale and difficulty. And when I returned to report my success, she'd respond only with a displeased grunt. Eventually, I asked whether I'd done something to offend her.
何でもできることがムカつく。
And that was her, admittedly rather irrational, answer. Naturally, I then inquired whether I should fail every so often, but...
はあ？あんた私のことバカにしてんの？
This inspired only a more pronounced scowl.
でも失敗させてみるっていうのも悪くないわよね。じゃあさ、あんたに最後の命令を出してあげる。
最後の命令？
そう。2週間後にある中間テスト。あれ、なくしてよ。
テスト？
人の言うことを聞くのがいい子だって言うなら、こういうお願いも聞いてくれるよね。どうなの？やれるの？
はい、私はいい子ですから。
言ったわね。いい？一度やるって言ったんだから、絶対やんなさいよ。後で、やっぱりできませんでした、すみませんって謝ってきても、私は絶対に許さないからね。
はい、わかりました。
From the moment I nodded my head, it was perhaps all but decided that I would end up in Mahama Academy. When she asked me if I was up for it, I heard a voice screaming "don't" from some corner of my mind. But soon enough, as the image of that day began to flicker its own warning before my eyes, that voice of caution was obliterated without a trace. For the next few days, I frantically racked my brains in search of a method to get rid of the scheduled midterm tests. How about stealing the tests before they can copy them? No. Even if I were to find the originals, the tests would be recreated. At most, I would earn a brief delay. In that case, how about copying the tests secretly and bringing her the answers? No. While that might ensure her a perfect score in her exams, the tests themselves would be held as usual.
じゃあ、どうすればいい？どうすればテストをなくすことができるの？
The more ideas I ran through, the more I realized the enormous difficulty of the task at hand. My focus grew slowly more intense and obsessive. My thoughts ran in circles. To make matters worse, as the day of the test grew inexorably closer, I began to see the familiar nightmares I had thought behind me. And so, driven slowly but surely into desperation, I finally arrived at my conclusion.
だったら学校をなくしちゃえばいいんだ。学校がなくなってしまえばテスト、授業全部なくなって
The moment I spoke those words, my ears filled with a high-pitched, almost nostalgic buzzing, and my consciousness was shrouded in fog. When I came to my senses, I was standing inside my school. At my feet were a pile of kerosene cans, the same sort my uncle stockpiled as fuel for our heaters. Presumably, I had carried them from my house to this building over the course of numerous round trips. And indeed, my arms and shoulders were throbbing with agony. The situation was clear enough. Moving as though possessed, I emptied the cans all around the building in what felt like minutes, ignoring the protests of my exhausted body. And in the end, I stood in my classroom and set the fire. The instant I dropped my match into the kerosene, flames sprouted up as though I'd flipped the switch on a stovetop. The fire spread rapidly down the fuse of oil and into the hallway. In the blink of an eye, the fire spread and grew, feeding off the wooden walls and desks, consuming the paper textbooks and cloth bags my classmates had left behind. The flames danced before my eyes. Even from a distance, I felt their heat on my skin. Just as I observed that it was becoming slightly painful to breathe the heated air, the shrill sound of the fire alarm began to resound throughout the building. The classroom I had studied in only yesterday was consumed in a literal sea of fire. And yet, even as a part of my world vanished before my eyes, I felt nothing in particular. Ah, look at it burn. The thoughts running through my mind were nothing but the disinterested impressions of a casual spectator. Having determined that it would be impossible to stay in this place any longer, I carefully exited the classroom through the nearest window. As I lowered myself onto the grass outside, I could hear the sound of distant sirens. How far would the flames reach before that fire engine arrived? How much damage before they could extinguish the blaze? No, it no longer mattered. The midterm exams would doubtless be cancelled regardless. I carried out my orders. I did what I was told. I was still a good girl. Yes. So this is Sachi's past, huh? Although the fire brigade rushed to the scene and extinguished the flames before the building could suffer much structural damage, the main classrooms were reduced to charred wrecks. As it contained the highest concentration of flammable materials in the building, the faculty rooms suffered particularly severe damage, and the scheduled midterm examinations had to be postponed indefinitely. Rumors that Sachi had been responsible spread quickly throughout the town, and when interviewed by the police, she immediately confessed to total responsibility for the incident. However, her motivation was unclear, and testimony from her classmates revealed that Sachi had been subjected to chronic bullying. Her confession was deemed unreliable, and suspicion came to rest on her tormentors. In the end, the investigators couldn't find any decisive evidence identifying the responsible party, and the arson case was closed without charges. Nonetheless, Sachi's aunt and uncle were disturbed by her confession and abnormal behavior throughout the incident. They had her receive a comprehensive psychiatric examination from a specialist, leading to a secondary diagnosis: a severe variety of obsessive-compulsive disorder, a condition that meant attending a normal school was ill-advised and potentially dangerous. Soon thereafter, it was arranged for Sachi to transfer to Mihama Academy. In other words, witnessing that accident had damaged Sachi's mind far more severely than was immediately apparent. Considering what I know of her current mindset, I doubt she even regards setting that fire as a mistake. Today, Sachi remains under the guardianship of her childless uncle and aunt. Her mother is still in the hospital, deep in a persistent coma. That would be a rough summary of how things currently stand. I toss the papers down onto the bench and look up into the sky. In other words, there's a lot more to Sachi than what I've seen so far. Back then, the only thing I knew was that Sachi's parents were busy with work and didn't pay much attention to her anymore. And these documents are business-like summaries pulled from Ichigaya's databases. I have the basic facts in sufficient detail to speculate, but it's hardly a comprehensive story. At the moment, Sachi is probably the only person in the world who knows the precise nature of the suffering that reshape her personality so dramatically. Even so, there's one thing I can say for certain. She suffered an incredibly cruel and abrupt loss at a young age. These 6 flimsy sheets of paper couldn't possibly have contained everything she went through.
はい、私はお父さんもお母さんも大好きでした。
From the way Sachi spoke those words, I think they were absolutely true. And that means she saw the people she loved most in the world fatally injured before her eyes. In the reports, her parents are described as a hardworking couple who cared deeply for their daughter. Their reputation in the neighborhood was excellent. Even without knowing the details of their relationship with Sachi, it's easy to understand that losing them would have been shocking and painful under any circumstances. What's more, it happened on her birthday. And, from the dates, it must have been the day after I said goodbye. At the time, my friendship with the girl in the playground had become my strongest source of emotional support. If the same had been true for Sachi as well. In a single day, she lost her closest family members and her closest friend. So those words she's so fond of, good girl, bad girl. She tried to drag me to the playground with an arbitrary promise. She ran out of her house that day without listening to her parents. And all of a sudden, she found herself alone. Her thought process isn't difficult to imagine. I was a selfish, bad girl, and everyone went away. From now on, I have to be a good girl and do what I'm told. Carried to an extreme, that's no different from turning yourself into an obedient, thoughtless robot. When the teachers tell her to work hard at her studies, she works hard. When some idiot tells her to wear a maid uniform, she never takes it off. Her own will and the intentions behind the orders are irrelevant. Performing them to the letter is the whole point. Doing what she's told is an end in itself. Sachi was an only child at the time. This simplistic, obsessive obedience was the sole coping method she could find. The only way she could escape her regret and guilt. No one has the right to blame her for that. Sachi stopped thinking for herself as a self-defense mechanism. Her wounds were so severe that she lost the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. That warped, absolute allegiance to her principles culminated in the school arson incident. To take the most extreme possible example, if someone unambiguously ordered Sachi to kill someone right now, she might commit murder without hesitation. The commandment she imposed on herself is a dangerous thing. A brittle wall, as likely to harm as protect. All things considered, might have been lucky that it was only arson. The more people know about Sachi's abnormality, the greater the risk of someone attempting to exploit it. An event like that was all but inevitable. For the same reason, it makes sense that she was transferred to this academy, with its small student body and limited contact with the outside world. The question now is whether I can actually do anything with this knowledge. I might be sitting here and analyzing other people's abnormalities, but I'm not a well-adjusted person myself by any stretch of the imagination. Can I, of all people, help someone regain normality? If there's one thing that gives me hope, it's the expression I saw on Sachi's face back then. Thinking it over now, I'm even more firmly convinced that her smiles have always been artificial, forced things, But just that once, something was clearly different. Something that makes me think I can bring her back. Might sound like flimsy grounds for optimism, but at our first meeting, my master took one look at me and declared, "We can still fix this one." That's why I'm here today. Come to think of it, my master told me something once. Accepting a favor isn't anything to be ashamed of, kid. But not returning it is. There's no need to overthink this. From that perspective, it's really very simple. Back then, Sachi's presence in my life saved me. And today, I have a chance to repay the favor. That's enough for now.
変えようとしているのは小峰さんだけじゃないのかもしれないわね。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。どうしたのよ、サチ？これ、うなされてるのよね。それに、すごい汗。とりあえず、起こしちゃった方がいいわね。よくわからないけど、勝手にそんなことしちゃってもいいものなの？夢を見てるくらいなら問題ないって。それにこのまま放っておいた方が体力奪われちゃうから。そうね。じゃあ私が。ねえサチ、起きなさい。サチ。お母さん。ダメ、呼びかけたくらいじゃ起きてくれない。それならどいてチルチル、今度は私がやってみるのよさ。おいサッチンってば、起きるのよさ。サチ？ミチル様、よかった。目が覚めたんだな、サッチン。それにマキちゃん。他にもアマネーと黒いのも一緒なのよさ。それにここは。ああ、三島崎にある病院よ。病院。そうでした。私一度気を失って。そう、それでお見舞いに来たら小峰さんがうなされていたから起こさせてもらったわ。すみません、皆さんにご迷惑をおかけしてしまって。さっちゃんが謝ることないって。ねえサチ、あんたさっきの夢。みちる、それ以上はダメ。あ、そっか、ごめんサチ。どうしてみちる様が謝るのでしょうか。本当に何でもないから、あんたも気にしないでよ。はい、わかりました。まあほら、無事にさっちゃんが見つかってこうして話すことができたんだからよかったじゃん。アマネーの言う通りなのよ。サッチンがいなくなってめちゃくちゃ心配したのよさ。私も探す手間くらいはかけたわね。すみません、いろいろとご迷惑をおかけしてしまいまして。ほらユミコ、あんたがそんなこと言うからまたサチが謝っちゃうでしょ。私は本当のことを言ったまでだけど。だとしてもそれを言わないのが友達ってもんでしょうが。本当にすみません。いいっていいって。だってさっちゃんはユージと約束した場所で待ってただけなんでしょ。はい、 束しましたから。
そっか。だったらさっちゃんは何も悪くない。うん。
あまねさん。
さすがあまねなのよ。心の大きさが胸に負けてないのよさ。
それは言えてるかもしれないわね。
榊さんまで。
まあ今はゆっくり休んで早く元気になるのがサチの仕事だからね。
はい、わかりました。
いでいででででで。
マキナ、動くと危ないって。
だってあまねのブラッシングが強引すぎるのよさ。
When I entered the dorm for the first time in 3 days, I'm greeted by the familiar sight of Amane grooming Makina in the lobby. Hey Amane, Sachi's scheduled to leave the hospital today, right?
うん、そうだけど。ユージ？
お兄ちゃん、今までどこで何してたのよ。
Well, here and there.
ちょっとなっちゃないわよ。さっちゃんが見つかって安心したかと思ったら、今度はユージがいなくなっちゃったってみんな心配してたんだよ。
Sorry, I had a job come in, and then I needed to butter up JB for a while. Couldn't quite find the time to come back.
JB さんを説得？
Well, I guess you could say that was part of the job too.
じゃあ仕事なら仕事だって一言言ってくれればよかったのに。
そうなのよさ。チルチルなんか頭にラップを巻いてうーなりながら深夜徘徊してたくらいなのよ。
I think that's just her regularly scheduled maintenance.
でもそれを聞いてきたってことは、ユージもさっちゃんの退院に付き合ってくれるってこと？
Actually, I was going to ask if you'd let me take care of that by myself.
ごめん。どうして一人で？
私とサッチンくらいの仲になると退院の瞬間を一緒に分かち合いたくなるのが当然ってもんなのよさ。
Yeah, I do understand that you'd want to be there. This is just me being selfish, but the thing is, I've got something important to discuss with Sachi, so it'd be more convenient if we could have some privacy.
二人っきりだと？
Yeah, I do. Don't worry, I'm planning to fill you in afterward.
なるほどね。
Amane rests her hand on her chin and nods thoughtfully.
わかった。ユージがそう言うなら、私たちはここで留守番してるわよ。
バカな。知らぬ間に意見をまとめられていたのよさ。
She said bakana.
だってほら、病院に行かなくてもさっちゃんとはすぐに会えるんだしさ。そう考えたら意固地になる必要もないでしょ。無言でお尻見るな。私が言ってるのはお尻の病気じゃなくて、そこまでムキになる必要はないってこと。
その物分かりの良さはすでにフランスパンあたりで買収済みか？
パンで釣られるのはあんたくらいでしょうが。てか、ユージがわがまま言うなんて珍しいことじゃん。
言われてみればそうなのよさ。
I'm not particularly conscious of that myself, but I guess I'll have to take their word for it.
ってわけで、マキナもそれでいいでしょ。おやつも作ってあげるからさ。
いいのかシェフ。私の舌はわがままだぞ。
はいはい、精一杯腕を振るわせていただきますよ。
Sorry, you two.
いいっていいって。その代わり荷物とかはちゃんと持ってあげてよね。
Yeah, of course.
病室でエロいことすんなよ。
Yeah, of course.
今返事までにわずかなラグが見受けられたのよさ。
そりゃあんたの質問に呆れただけだってば。
When I quietly opened the door to her hospital room, I find Sachi up and about, neatly folding her blankets next to the bed. I'd bet good money you're one of those people who make their own bed when staying in a hotel.
なぜそのことを。
Anybody could guess from a look at this little scene. Well, if they weren't distracted by the completely out of place maid outfit first.
退院の時は制服だろというご指摘があればすぐに着替えますが。
Well, I don't think it's exactly a formal occasion or anything.
でしたらなるべくと言われていますので、ここはメイド服を着させていただきますね。
Right. There's an awkward moment before I can manage to respond. Now that I know about Sachi's principles, those typical words inspired a twinge of something like pity. Alright, I'll take care of the bedding.
ですが、
You're still recovering. Spare the back talk for another time, alright?
風見さんがそうおっしゃるのでしたら、すみませんがよろしくお願いします。
Sure. Changing places with Sachi at the side of her bed, I quickly remove the sheets and begin to fold the mattress. As I work, Sachi stares intently at my face. You have something you want to ask me? Go ahead.
ではどうして風見さんがここに？
There's something strange about me coming to pick you up from the hospital?
いえ、そんなことはないのですが、私が入院している間、風見さんは一度もいらっしゃらなかったので。
Oh, you miss me?
というより、風見さんは私のことを怒っているのではないかと思っていました。
And why would you think that?
それは公園で会った風見さんが悲しそうな顔をされていたので。
I see. So that's it.
はい。
As she speaks, Sachi's expression is distinctly downcast. Not a look you see on her face often. Normally, Sachi can present an expression of unperturbed, detached calm under virtually any circumstances. This must have been bothering her a great deal, and if so... Actually, Sachi, I had something I wanted to discuss with you. Sort of related to your question just now.
私にお話ですか？
Yeah, it's kind of important.
というと、商店街の角にあるタバコ屋さんの奥さんの不倫相手がついに判明したのでしょうか？
That's important to you?
何を言っているんですか、風見さん。商店街は夏休み前からその話題で持ちきりですよ。
That a fact. We seem to have gotten a bit sidetracked here. Anyway, let's finish up here first. We can talk after.
はい、わかりました。
で、小峰さんが戻ってきて早々、全員が集められたのはなぜなのかしら。
それからどうして制服を着て教室集合なのかもね。
Immediately after returning from the hospital with Sachi, I arranged for all our dorm mates to gather in the classroom, resulting in this admittedly justifiable barrage of questions. Sorry to stand on ceremony and all, but this is something of a formal report, so I figured it couldn't hurt to have an appropriate setting.
正式な報告？
Yeah. In order to ensure Mahama Academy remains a harmonious, living environment for everyone here, there's something I need to announce to all of you immediately.
ふむふむ、話は分かったわ。で、その正式な報告ってのは一体何なの？
Well, to get straight to the point, Sachi and I are dating now. I draw Sachi up to my side by the waist, say what needs to be said, and wait. The classroom goes dead silent for a long moment. Our four classmates, scattered randomly across the room, stare up at us, a range of uncomprehending and quizzical expressions frozen on their faces. In the end, the first to break the increasingly awkward stalemate is Sachi.
あまり驚かれていないみたいですね。
いや、十分すぎるほど驚いてるってば。
その割には皆さん落ち着かれているように見えたのですが。
落ち着いてたっていうか、びっくりして言葉が出なかっただけなんだけどね。 私なんて冗談抜きで心臓が止まりかけたんだから。
そうなのよ。ただでさえ危ういチルチルの脳細胞に血がいかなくなってさらに残念なことになるところだったのよさ。
そうよそうよ。バカにされてることに気づかないところは確かに残念ね。
Indeed.
何？
Okay, mature is one thing, but I didn't really expect the rest of you to have trouble getting your heads around this.
いや、言葉の意味は把握してるんだけど、なんていうかいろいろ唐突すぎてさ。
最近2人の仲が良かったのは知っていたのだけど、ここまでの展開はさすがに予想してなかったのよさ。
そうね。今日がエイプリルフールだとしてもタチの悪い冗談だわ。
I don't think this is April Fool's right now, Yumiko. It's not even April. Hold it, Sakaki. Two things. One, it's July. Two, what are you planning to do with that?
それはあなたの返答次第ね。
Alright. I'll say this again as unambiguously as I can. Sachi and I really are dating. Not a joke. When I declared the matter in the simplest possible terms, a brief silence settles in the classroom for the second time in the last few minutes.
小峰さん、風見くんの言っていることは本当なの？
はい、実は先ほど病院からの帰り道で。
Okay then, Sachi. As for that important discussion,
はい、
I want you to be my girlfriend. Alright with you?
はい、風見さんがそうおっしゃるのでしたら。ということがありまして。
で、サッチンは2つ返事で OK したと？
うん、そうだね。
何その、なあ、サッカー部に入らないか？まあお前がそう言うならみたいなノリは。
I kinda get that, Michiru.
ですが、実際にそういうノリでしたし。
いや、ノリがそうだったとしてもそれくらいの気持ちで OK しちゃっていいの？
というと？
ほら、付き合うってことは恋人になるってことでしょ？そう考えたら普通は好きな者同士っていうのが基本じゃない？
はい、それは天音さんの言う通りだと思います。
ならズバリ聞くけれど、小峰さんは風見くんのことをどう思っているの？
風見さんのことは嫌いではありませんよ。
じゃあ好きなのかしら？
それはよくわかりません。
The moment those words leave Sachi's mouth, the tense atmosphere in the classroom softens rapidly.
わからないか。ユージの隣に席を移した時も同じようなこと言ってたし、それが正直なところなんじゃないの？
Damn, that's like super long ago on the common route.
だとしたらひとまずは安心かもしれないわね。
And the aggressive inquisitors, who'd seemed just about ready to physically go for my throat a minute ago, not in apparent satisfaction. I don't quite follow, but does this mean none of you have any objections?
なわけないでしょうが！今のあんたはサチが頼み事を断れないいい子だってことを利用して交際を迫ってるようなもんなのよ。
I'm not holding a gun to her head, am I?
たとえそうだとしても。
Hey Sachi, if you don't like this idea, I'm completely fine with you turning me down, alright? You can be honest. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to ask one more time. You willing to be my girlfriend?
はい、私は風見さんとお付き合いをすることが嫌なわけではありませんから。
There, straight from the horse's mouth.
くー、だからってそういう聞き方は卑怯よ。
Okay, let me ask you something. How would a fair romance work exactly? Pursuing someone romantically means trying to monopolize their affection. Of course, you use everything you can to try and get a foot in the door. Love's fundamentally selfish. I agree. I don't see any real difference between my strategy here and, say, your tsundere thing, or Amane and her chest blubber attacks. Am I wrong?
なんだろう。言ってることはめちゃくちゃなはずなのに、この妙な説得力は。
What are you talking about? Seems logical to me, Amane.
でも。
Alright. I'm not unsympathetic to your complaints. If you feel Sachi's consent isn't enough under the circumstances, I'll provide you with an even better argument.
そんなものがあったのよ。
Yeah, truth is, I've kept this quiet until now, but
いたんだか？
Sachi and I are childhood friends. They're kinda in disbelief. I guess they're not gonna believe that, are they? And so, the third silence settles in the classroom.
じゃあ、しょうがないかも。
松島さん、どうしてこんな理由で説得されているのよ。
Because she is dumb, Yumiko.
だって幼馴染って言ったらツンデレよりメジャーどころじゃない。
I actually have no idea how popular our popular childhood friends are in the genre, or, you know, the typical waifu list category. But it seems that is one of my fundamental weaknesses, so I would probably believe you if it's like a market leader, Michiru.
そういう問題か。
サッチンお兄ちゃんの言ってることは本当なのよ。
はい、私と風見さんは幼い頃にしばらく一緒に遊んでいたことがありました。
Incidentally, back then we called each other Sachan and Yukun.
榊さんが照れてどうするの。
That's not all. Back in the day, we kissed on a regular basis.
正確には唇対頬でしたので、キスというよりはチューと呼んだ方がいいかもしれません。
チューがサッチンはロリってた頃も大胆だったんだな。
これが若気の至りというものでしょうか。
ちょっと若すぎるけどね。
So anyway, put a romantic spin on all this, and you could call it a miracle that Sachi and I were reunited here.
奇跡だなんて。そんなのただの偶然だわ。
Call it what you want. The odds of us meeting again here, meeting again were incredibly low. Probably millions to one. Yet here we are. Also, how our romance starts off isn't the most important thing. What matters is how you grow into it.
紡いでいく？
Yeah. I know Sachi probably doesn't have clear romantic feelings for me yet. But when I found her, she'd been waiting for me in the pouring rain for an entire day, without even an umbrella. I've been thinking things over seriously ever since then, and I've made up my mind. I want to see her happy, so I'm going to make that happen, whatever it takes. I'll protect Sachi to the extent she's comfortable with, and I won't make her regret becoming my girlfriend. I can promise you people that. Still have a problem? Find someone who can make her happier than I can, and I'll gladly step aside. But not until then. Seems I've reduced Imane to illiterate grunts.
だってユージにそこまで言われたら、そう言ってもらえなかった私たちは何も言えなくなっちゃうじゃない。
Amane's tone of voice is vaguely sulky. Not unexpected in her case, but I'm slightly surprised to see Sakaki and Michiru showing similarly mixed emotions on their faces.
つまりお兄ちゃんにここまで言わせたサッチンの勝ちってことだな。
勝ち？
サッチンは風見雄二という男を奪い合う戦いに見事勝利したのよ。
I like how you made that sentence, Makina. Thanks.
そうなんだ。
Okay, let's try this again. You willing to accept our relationship?
お前らそこんとこどうなのよ。ここまで言
言われたら認めるしかないんじゃない？
そうね。
私もそう思う。
ということらしいのよさ。
Thanks for the summary, but what about you, Makina?
私はもともと聞き分けのいい良い子だから、あまりとやかく言うつもりはないのよさ。ただし、もし私の可愛いサチンが泣くようなことがあったら、すぐに異議申し立てをさせてもらうのよ。
Sounds about right.
よろしい。
ねえあまね、なんだか私マキナがすっごい大人に見えてきたんだけど。
Seems like I've managed to persuade them for the time being. Alright then, looks like we're pretty much done here. Sachi and I are going to head out now.
というと、この後も何か予定が？
Yeah, wanted to talk some stuff over, now that things are official. Alright, later. Let's go, Sach. God damn it, Yuji.
ギョイ。
もう変なあだ名つけてる。早速恋人気取りなのよさ。
その恋人に対してギョイって返事はどうなのよ。しかも2人が幼馴染だったなんてね。
確かに言いたいことは山ほどあるわ。でも時にはああいう強引さが人を癒すのかもしれないわね。
After heading out onto the roof with Sachi in tow, I leaned back against the tall wire fence and exhaled. Our classmates' reactions were a little unpredictable, but in the end, I managed to get their consent, if not approval. With our relationship established, I'll be able to spend more time around Sachi without it seeming unnatural. Simply being there would be a good first step. Sachi stands at my side with typically excellent posture, staring off vaguely into the distance as if lost in thought. Sort of threw things into a commotion the instant you got out of the hospital, didn't I? You feeling alright?
はい。3日もお休みをいただいたので、体はすっかり元通りです。
That a fact?
はい。
Even so, she responds to my question immediately, turning toward me with a pleasant smile on her face. To be sure, that's all completely standard Sachi, but the way she was gazing off absent-mindedly instead of waiting attentively for her next orders is a little unusual. Also, I know this is a little late in the game, but sorry about springing the girlfriend thing on you out of nowhere.
いえ、そんなことはありません。風見さんにそう言っていただけるのはとても嬉しいことですから。
Happy, huh? If what Sachi calls happiness now was really something deserving of the name, I don't think I would have gotten this worried about her. At the moment, she's buried her feelings so deep that she can't even give herself a straight answer about whether she likes me. But for the same reason, becoming a formal couple should be a meaningful development. Anyway, I know it must seem sudden, but I meant what I said to the others. Not that we're dating. I'm going to put a real effort into being your boyfriend. That's a promise. Fair warning, I'm planning to give you a few pushes forward to help you be yourself.
私が私でいられるようにというのは何やら哲学的なお話ですね。
I'm not going to explain yet. You have to wait and see.
なるほど。風見さんなりのサプライズというわけですね。
That it is. Get a bit excited?
はい。今の風見さんなら俺は総理大臣になる
You're
と言って
crazy.
も驚きません。
You really should be. Look, there's no point in acting surprised now, okay?
なるほど。なかなかタイミングが難しいです。
Even in casual, aimless conversations like this, Sachi's self-imposed rules regularly assert themselves. No matter what happened in the past, she's a student at Mahama Academy now. In that case, we may as well get her a few appropriate memories to remember her student life by. I think that's what Sachi needs more than anything else right now. It's not going to solve all her problems, but it's a necessary start. Okay, here's the thing. Now that we're in a relationship, There's 3 things I want you to try and do for me, Sachi.
それはズバリ風見さんの性欲、愛欲、肉欲を満たすことですね。
Those are all the same thing, Sachi. Not only are you spectacularly wrong, but all 3 of those mean the exact same thing.
では
Number 1. Try to spend as much time with me as you can, within reason.
なるべくということは寝るときやトイレ、お風呂の時間以外と考えていいのでしょうか。
I would assume there would be something else other than those 4, but let's say yes for now. Okay, only 3. I miscounted. Roughly, yeah. But I'm not looking to establish any hard and fast rules here. Don't think too hard about these.
わかりました。
Sachi closes her eyes and nods slightly to herself in a familiar gesture. Come to think of it, this probably signifies the moment where she binds herself to a new precept. Okay, second up.
はい。
From now on, I want you to try and actively think about the reason behind things.
理由を考えるですか？
That's right. Remember that time a while back when Michiru asked you to bring her a metal bat?
それは風見さんと一緒に大浴場のお掃除をした日のことですよね。
That's right. At the time, you told me you weren't interested in the reason Michiru wanted the bat. But I think you'd be better off showing a little more curiosity about things like that. For one thing, some effort in that department should help cut down on those weird misunderstandings you're always making.
なるほど、納得です。
Alright. As for number 3, generally speaking, I want you to observe my behavior carefully.
すみません。それはどういう意味でしょう？
Yeah, let's see. As your boyfriend, I'm going to spend a lot of time with you. We'll do plenty of things together, and talk a lot more than we used to. So as my girlfriend, I'd like to actively make note of how I act in any given situation. I know you might not understand at the moment, but I think it's going to be helpful down the road.
わかりました。それなら風見さんの一挙手一投足をこの目にしっかりと焼き付けておくようにします。
Yeah, you do that. So far, so good. If these rules function properly, the time we spent together should prove beneficial to Sachi. That's all I wanted to say, but you have any questions on your end, Sachi?
では一つ質問があるのですが。
Good to hear. Shoot.
はい。実は先ほどからずっと気になっていたのですが、風見さんの私に対する呼び方はサチからサッチにシフトしたのでしょうか？
I was just thinking how unusual it was for you to be staring off into the distance. But you were worrying about that of all things?
何を言うんですか、風見さん。呼び名は日常生活はもちろん作戦行動下においてもそれなりに重要な役割を担っているポイントですよ。
I mean, I guess that's true, but why would you bring up that point?
もし風見さんのコードネームがマッドハッターではなくミチル様だったら通信のたびに嘲笑がこぼれ仕事どころではなくなるはずです。
You know, Michiru'd bite your leg if she heard that. But, considering the Michiru-sama incident, this does seem to be a fairly important point to Sachi. Alright. If it's that big of a deal to you, I'll think it over carefully.
よろしくお願いします。
That said, the nickname before was a completely spur-of-the-moment thing, and Sachi has always worked pretty well for me. Alright. I think I'm going to stick with Sachi after all. It's what I'm used to at this point.
わかりました。それでは逆に私はこれから風見さんのことを何とお呼びしたらいいでしょう？
Let's see. The way she is now, Sachi'd probably call me Oni-chan or darling without even batting an eyelid if I asked. Might be something worth taking advantage of since I have the chance. Alright then. From now on, why don't you call me Yu-kun, the way you used to?
これは心がけ2にも関わる質問なのですが、風見さんはそちらの方がお好みということなのでしょうか？
Yeah, I guess. It's kind of nostalgic. And first names feels more natural for a couple, don't you think?
なるほど。ゆうくんにはそんな効果があったんですね。
If you like, I can call you Sachin myself.
その場合、天音さんとの被りが懸念されますが、風見さんのご希望ということであれば、私は首を縦に振るだけです。
Alright, understood. As always, she's seriously awkward when it comes to expressing what she really wants.
ギギギギ私の名前で笑いが巻き起こるだなんて。サチとは一度私有を決する必要がありそうね。
やめときなって、みちるが絶対負けるんだから。
ぐ
それより普通にいい雰囲気だったのは気のせいかしら。ああ、それは確かにね。なんか覗き見るのも悪い気がしてくるくらいだったかも。
だから私は最初から言ってるのよさ。お前らはちょっとマーキナ。
Oh,
あ
sorry.
んたユージのことをお兄ちゃんって呼ぶくらい気に入ってるくせに、何一人だけ大人ぶってるのよ。いいチルチル。人は常に成長する生き物なのよ。
Don't start being philosophical with me, Makina. I do like that though.
成長しないのは歩みを止めた人間とチルチルの胸くらいのものなのよさ。
あんたも泣かず、いつか絶対泣かせてやるんだから。
やめときなって。逆に泣かされるのが目に見えてるんだから。
ほぼー。負けるな私。
My master always used to tell me that the success or failure of an operation is 80% decided before you pull the trigger. I mean, that's true. Doesn't have to be before you pull the trigger. This applies to any sort of operation, okay? You just a freaking assassin. Point being, preliminary planning and advanced groundwork are crucial. And in general, disorganization and dysfunction in the field is the product of problems with your group's interpersonal dynamics. Smooth communication and functional relationships create the favorable conditions necessary for success. You need to keep the people around you up to date on your situation and ensure that everyone shares a common understanding. In obedience to that theory, I voluntarily submitted myself to an aggravating interrogation from my classmates yesterday. But unfortunately, there's still one more person in this school I need to offer a report to. Well, considering that she possesses the authority to restrict my actions, it might be more accurate to call this one a negotiation rather than a report. When negotiating, it's a serious mistake to admit a position of weakness. If the balance of power is overwhelmingly tilted toward your opponent, your goal is to keep them from realizing it. Agreed? At times, a little empty bravado is called for. So in summary, Sachi and I are dating as of yesterday. You have a problem with that?
あら、それはおめでとう。
Apparently unfazed by both my arrogant tone and my sizable pair of feet, currently propped up on her nice wooden table, Chizuru offers me a little round of mock applause in place of a scolding. Aren't teachers supposed to object to this sort of thing by default?
それは偏見というものよ。健全なお付き合いは人を成長させるものだし、私としては反対する理由がありません。
You're not considering the possibility I might take advantage of Sachi and then throw her away.
そうすることが小峰さんのためになるとあなたが判断したなら、私は何も言わないわ。
Sounds like something JB would say.
あら、春寺さんに似ていると言ってもらえるのは嬉しいわね。
What? A modest, youthful woman like you, who could still pass for a student in a pinch? Idolizing some shaggy-headed bimbo who traipses around dressed like a transvestite magician?
違います。そんな言い方は彼女に失礼だし、彼女以上にあなたのことを理解している人間はいないという意味でです。
Ah, that's a relief.
それに、あなたがそんなことのできない子だってことくらいは知っているつもりよ。
And now she's talking like some kind of educator. Cheeky woman.
じゃあ私の職業は
Your principal.
大変よくできました。
The women I know have a habit of coolly declaring that they understand things about me that I'm not aware of myself. From my perspective, it's kind of disconcerting. Maybe I'm just that transparent a human being, but whatever the case. This sort of vague, unconditional trust just makes the pressure and sense of responsibility I've burdened myself with weigh all the heavier on my shoulders.
というわけで私は学生の自主性を尊重します。
Independence, she says. This sense that I'm acting exactly as Chizuru anticipated is a little galling, but I guess putting up with a bit of smug self-satisfaction on her part is far preferable to fighting against her opposition. To be honest though, I'm not confident I can play the boyfriend role particularly well.
あなたが弱音を吐くなんて珍しいわね。
Guess so. My master taught me the knowledge and attitude necessary to get by in Ichigaya. And so far, I've been able to compensate for my shortcomings in other fields through determined effort. So if I was dealing with someone who wanted a comfortable lifestyle, or a prettier face, or something, I'm confident that I'd be able to make it happen, given enough time. But I honestly don't know if I'll ever be able to make happiness mean the same thing for Sachi as it does for me. I'm well aware that once someone forgets what happiness is, it's not easy to make them remember again. After all, you could say this whole project is an attempt to do for Sachi what my master did for me.
そう。あなたには悪いけど、今の言葉を聞いて少し安心したわ。
Chizuru relaxes in her chair as she speaks, and her eyes find mine, gentle as a new mother's. Why would hearing about my self-doubt inspire relief exactly?
それはあなたが仕事を依頼した業者だっていうなら不安にもなるけれど、今のあなたは学生で、そもそも人間という生き物自体が未完成なものでしょ。だから初めてのことには自信がなくて当然だし、人との付き合いを繰り返していくことでその穴を埋めていくものなんじゃないかしら。
Weren't you the one mocking me for being a romantic just the other day? You're laying it on pretty thick yourself all of a sudden.
あのね、私がこんな話をしてるからって茶化しているわけじゃないのよ。
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
だったらいいんだけど、あなたが今いる場所は学園だということは覚えておいてほしいわね。
And what's that supposed to mean? Apart from the blindingly obvious.
学園という場所には教師である私がいて、クラスメートの女の子たちがいる。だからわからないことや不安なことがあったらどんどん周りに助けを求めればいいじゃない。
That's pretty good advice, actually. Help from the people around me. Huh.
あなたもこの学園に来てからしばらくになるし、あの子たちが意外に頼りになるってことには気づいているんじゃない？
At first glance, they're an eccentric bunch, and a number of them have some serious deficiencies as students. But as a group, they've got an unexpectedly observant and responsible side when it comes to helping out their classmates. When Sachi went missing, every one of them cooperated on their own initiative, above and beyond what I asked of them. Can't say Chizuru is wrong about this one.
その顔は覚えありって感じね。
Yeah, suppose so.
それに今は幸い夏休みなんだし、小峰さんとの時間を増やしていく間にあなたなりの答えを見つければいいんじゃないかしら。いくらあなたが仕事を抱えた学生だと言ってもそれくらいの時間はあるでしょう。
Guess you're probably right. My uncertainty about this new relationship is my own problem. The things Sachi needs from me aren't going to change. The soul searching and second guessing can wait until after she's regained something like normality.
いまだに学生に間違われる女の話でも少しは役に立った？
Yeah, My apologies. I retract the comment.
そうそう、あなたにはその謙虚さが大切よ。
As Chizuru stands from her chair, I follow her lead and push myself up off the sofa. Well, I'll give it my best shot.
あまり難しく考える必要なんてない。あなたが小峰さんのことを考えて行動しようと思っているなら、それはもう立派な彼氏なんだと思うわよ。
Hope you're right. Just as I reported to Chizuru, yesterday Sachi and I officially became a couple. Although doing so was a necessary step toward helping Sachi regain herself, I don't want our relationship to be nothing but the means to an end. And while my master taught me a few things about romance, it was more like playing make-believe than anything else. This is the first time I've been in a genuine romantic partnership. I've somehow stumbled into a position of potentially considerable influence over the life of someone I care about. It's a heavy thought. A single drop of sweat runs down my spine, sending a slight unseasonable chill through my body. Guess it's only natural that I'd be nervous. Lowering my eyes from the ceiling, I discover a shadowy shape protruding slightly from behind a pillar. Judging from the single glint of light that follows as I move, they're probably watching me with a monocular of some sort. A decently made toy of that sort can read fine newsprint from 10 meters. The Pro models are highly useful as inconspicuous portable surveillance devices. But since this is almost certainly just Machina screwing around with something she ordered out of the back of a comic book, it shouldn't pose a problem to just leave it be. But even as I move from place to place, the shadowy form and its glint of light follows persistently. Getting followed around all day would be kind of unpleasant. I think it's time I put an end to this. After a moment of quiet concentration, I throw open my eyes and dash fiercely at my hidden observer. And, making full use of my surprise advantage, I barrel straight into my target before they have time to react. As my momentum carries us rolling across the ground, I twist my body to protect the stalker from the impact. When we come to rest in the shadows, there's a floral scent tickling my nose, and a feeling of something soft in my hand. This would be a female breast, if I'm not mistaken. A little small for Amane or Yumiko, but not meager enough to be Makina or Michiru. Sachi, that you?
驚きました。ゆうくんは胸の大きさで人物を特定することが可能なんですね。
It's a skill, Sachi. It's a skill. Well, to be honest, I was also going off your scent and non-reaction to being tackled, among other things. I rise to my feet as I speak, then reach out a hand to Sachi, who's still sprawled out on the ground. Why are you blushing all of a sudden?
いえ、これから彼氏彼女的なことをするのなら雰囲気作りをと思いまして。
Appreciate the thought, but nobody asked for that sort of help.
では、どうして私は押し倒されてしまったのでしょう。
Because you've been stalking me since I left the principal's office.
ということは、最初から気づかれていたんですね。
Of course I was. The way you kept pointing that thing straight at my face, it'd be pretty damn hard to miss the reflection from the lens.
なるほど。以前マキちゃんとスパイごっこをするために購入していた KGB で採用されていると噂のスパイスコープを使ってみたのですが。
The hell is a KGB, Sachi?
反射光のことまでは取扱説明書に書いてありませんでした。
Well, probably because it was too obvious to mention. More importantly, why did you feel the need to conduct a surveillance operation on me this late in the game? Did somebody ask you to investigate my movements?
はい、ゆうくんに頼まれました。
Oh, I did. Wait, I did?
はい、ゆうくんは昨日私に 俺のことをよく見ていてくれと言っていましたから。
And that's why you were spying on me from the shadows with a monocular?
はい、裸眼よりも細かな部分の変化を見逃さないよう、レンズ6枚、プリズム2枚構成で抜かりなしです。
How reassuring. Naturally, I didn't mean observe carefully in that sense, but Sachi interpreted it this way. I'll have to make a mental note for future reference. Just as I'm heaving a small sigh, Michiru's shrill voice approaches.
ちょっと頼みたいことがあるんだけど。って何よ、ユージも一緒？
If that's a problem, I can leave.
別にそういうわけじゃないけど。まさか付き合い始めたことをいいことにこんなところでおかしなことをしようとしてたわけじゃないでしょうね。
Calm down, girl.
落ち着いてください、みちる様。鼻息の荒さが尋常じゃなくなっています。
そうね。せっかくの淑女が台無しになるところだったわ。
My finely honed instincts are telling me it's probably best not to ask what dignity at the moment.
それで本題はどのようなお話だったんですか？
ちょっとサチに部屋の片付けを手伝ってもらいたかったのよ。
In other words, you're incapable of picking up after yourself. Good to know.
私はあれよ、とても綺麗好きだけど部屋を散らかす方がちょっとだけ得意なのよ。
Sounds rough.
でしょー。で、サチは今大丈夫なの？
ゆうくん、みちる様がこう言ってるのですが。
ゆうくん！
I'm pretty sure I already mentioned she used to call me that when we were kids. Is it that surprising to hear her using it now?
そういえば屋上でそんな話になってたわよね。
On the roof.
なんでもないわよ。電波、宇宙からの回電波をたまたまキャッチみたいな。サチ、あんたは急に人のツインテールを引っ張ってどうするつもり？
いえ、どうやらアンテナの具合が悪かったようでしたので微調整を。
Okay, Sachi, I think that's the first time I see you with that face. At least with that colored, like not colored, I guess. What's that thing on the bottom of your eye? Like some eye bags? You're looking very scary right now, girl.
あんたは電波を受信なんて冗談に決まってるでしょ。空飛ぶ魔法の冗談よ。
はい、みちる様のギャグは2月の北海道より寒いですよね。
それって褒め言葉？それともけなし言葉？
It's an insult, Michiru. That has to be one of the more inept attempts at dodging a question I've ever seen. It seems safe to conclude our classmates were listening in our conversation on the rooftop.
でどうなの？サチ借りてっちゃっても平気？
Yeah, don't mind me.
ということらしいです。
じゃあ彼氏の OK も出たしお願いね。
はい。
Accept what others ask of you without exception. You could call that the principle that defines Sachi as she is today. So come to think of it, this might present a good opportunity to disrupt the status quo a little. Actually, hold on a second.
どうかした？
Can I help out with this request as well?
ユージが私の部屋の片付けをってこと？
Yeah.
急にどうしてよ。
Cleaning a room involves physical labor after all. As a boyfriend, I think it's only natural that I reduce my girlfriend's burden wherever possible.
はいはい。ユーは乗る気ですか？一人者への見せつけってわけですか？
You can interpret it however you want. Is it alright if I help? Or do you want Sachi to handle this alone for some reason?
そうね。私としては部屋が片付けば問題ないわね。
Very accommodating of you. Much obliged.
あれ？なんか私感謝されてる？
Yeah, that you did. You're just as understanding as I'd hope, Michiru.
ふふよくわからないけどユージに褒められるのも悪い気分じゃないわね。というわけでサッチ、今回はユージにも手伝ってもらうことにするから。はい、依頼主のみちる様がおっしゃるのであれば私は全然構いません。
Alright, Sachi, you'll be operating as my support.
了解です。
早速仕切られてるし。
So this is Michiru's room.
片付けの手伝いは了承したけど、あんまりチロチロ見ないでよ。
Not a problem. I've more or less grasped the structure of the room itself.
ではユウくん、みちる様の下着がしまわれている場所はどこだかわかりますか？
Same as you, Sachi, in the top drawer of her dresser.
なんでわかるのよ。
もしかしてエスパー？
You're stupid, Michiru. Actually, that's exactly it. But if the truth gets out, it'd become a huge hassle. Keep it secret from the others, will you?
あんたもいろいろ大変だったのね。
At times like these, one can't help being grateful for Michiru's easily manipulated nature. Anyway, the room itself doesn't look that messy. What did you want us to clean up specifically?
それはあれよ。
Averting her eyes in shame, Michiru points to a corner of her room, where numerous stacks of dusty manga tower halfway to the ceiling. From glance at the titles, they all seem to be tsundere-centric.
ゆるゆるに縛られたままのビニール紐が自分で片付けようとして挫折したことを物語っていますね。しょうがないでしょ。いくらきつく縛ろうとしても最後で緩んじゃうんだから。
And that's why you came to Sachi?
そうよ。これでやることは分かったんだから、あとは任せてもいいのよね。
Yeah, I already gave you my word I'd help, so you can expect my best efforts.
よろしくお願いします。
Gathering the plastic strings from the floor, I make 3 loops, then begin to slip the magazines inside about 6 at a time. Get a good pile inside, then cross the strings so they intersect on top. Make a few small loops at the corners, and only then pull it taut. There, a good tight bundle.
何？ユージはあれ？テレビのゴールデンタイムで裏技の番組とかやってた人？
Not quite. Picked this one up from some book I read ages ago. That's all.
最近だと荷造り用の紐自体にいくつかの結び方が記載してある場合も多いですよ。
That's actually pretty interesting.
へえ、私紐の結び方なんて蝶々結びくらいしか知らないかも。
Same. I only know the shoelace one and then the dead one, where you can't open it unless you brute force it. Sachi, how many do we have left?
それが今ユウくんがまとめているもので最後みたいです。
My hand's still in motion. I ask for a progress report, only to be informed the job's practically over. By dividing the work efficiently between the two of us, we've completed Michiru's request in less than 10 minutes.
じゃあそろそろ私がビニール紐で縛られてるわけを説明してちょうだい。
Huh? When I turn back, Michiru is rolling helplessly around the floor, her entire body bound tightly with plastic string in the popular tortoiseshell pattern. Hey there, Michiru. I understand if you've acquired a taste for bondage, but it strikes me as kind of rude to play with yourself while people are doing your chores for you.
私だって好きで縛られてるわけじゃないわよ。
これはあんたの彼女がやったの。
Sachi did?
はい、ユウくんのおかげで作業的に余裕がありましたので、この機会に縛り方を体で覚えていただこうと思いまして。
この機会にじゃないわよ。
教えるなら普通に教えてよ。っていうかそもそも縛り方違うし。では次は本を縛るのと同じ方法で。
それはいいからさっさとほどきなさいよ、もう。
は 。
Although I suppose this could be taken as another demonstration of the friendly and trusting relationship these two share, the way she meekly allowed Sachi to truss her up like a Christmas ham can only be described as pure Michiru.
でもまあ私が苦労したのが嘘みたいにすぐ終わっちゃったわね。
Well, yeah, the request itself wasn't anything particularly tough.
ゆうくん、その発言は私たちの力を借りたみちる様への侮辱になる可能性があります。
私だってやろうと思えばきっと一人でできたわよ。
その代わり緩んだ紐が原因でゴミを出す日に階段で漫画をぶちまけヌヒーンと叫ぶみちる様の姿が見えます。
You don't have to picture it that clearly, Sachi.
占うな占うな。
Hmm.
まあ二人のおかげで助かったのは本当だから一応お礼は言っとくわ。
Yeah, same to you, Michiru. You've been a help.
ありがとうございますみちる様。
なんか手伝いを頼んだ方がお礼を言われるって変な感じね。
No need to think too hard about that one. Incidentally, if you need another favor sometime, you can come straight to me.
そしたら今日みたいにユージが手伝ったりしてくれるの？
Yeah, as long as I can help, I will. Anything you want, feel free to ask. Hmm? Hardly as shocking an offer as all that, is it?
その変なことは言ってないんだけど、なんでもっていうのは本当になんでもなの？
I don't know what else I'd mean. Same deal as Sachi, basically. Of course, that only goes for the humanly possible.
それでも十分すぎる。
Muttering the words more to herself than anyone else, Michiru pumps a fist at her side in an apparent display of enthusiasm. What's with you?
なんでもないわよ。とにかく今日は助かったわ。じゃあそういうことでまたね。
Yeah. After abruptly terminating the conversation, Michiru practically pushes Sachi and me out of her room, then slams the door shut. Don't really understand what that was all about, but it seems like she has something on her mind all of a sudden.
昨今のゲリラ豪雨より到達。それがみちる様ですから。
I don't know what you mean, Sachi. It seems the day I can fully decipher Michiru's modus operandi is still far away.
それとゆうくんはこれから何をする予定なのでしょうか？
Not really. Thought I'd just read in my room for a while.
でしたら私もご一緒させていただいてもよろしいでしょうか？
Yeah, I'm the one who just asked you to try and spend time with me after all.
ありがとうございます。
These actions have meaning. This is for her own good in the long run. But even so, that doesn't change the fact that I'm taking advantage of Sachi's internal rules to manipulate her behavior.
ゆうく
Something wrong?
ん、もしかして私何か変なことを言ったでしょうか？
No, not really.
それならよかったです。
Apparently relieved by my response, Sachi smiles broadly. I noticed this earlier as well, but apparently the girl's pretty astute at picking up on small changes in my expression. Okay, back to the topic at hand. Go grab a few books from your room and bring them over, alright? The genre doesn't matter.
わかりました。では10分後くらいにお邪魔させていただきますね。
Yeah. When she asked that question, those clear and steady eyes seemed to be staring right through my skull to the guilty feelings rolling around inside my mind. Gave me a bit of a start.
よし、二人とももう行ったみたいね。
What are you doing?
ユージが何でも言うことを聞くなんて大情報。すぐに当局へ報告しないと。何？
The hell? What are they trying to do? Where is that coalition? Inside my practically undecorated room, Silent except for the sound of the air conditioning I turned on for Sachi's benefit. I turned the pages of my book without offering any real conversation. Sachi doesn't offer a word of complaint at any of this. When I glance over, she's sitting passively exactly where she was an hour ago, a contented smile on her face. Look, Sachi, are you planning to read at some point, or what?
こうしてゆうくんを見ているだけでも楽しいのですが、やはり私も本を読んだ方がいいでしょうか。
Well, I'm not trying to force you or anything, but is watching someone who's sitting around reading a book really any fun?
そうですね。読んでいる内容や部分によって表情に微妙な変化がありますし、もう2時間くらいはずっと同じ姿勢で本を読み続けているのはすごい集中力です。これがマキちゃんなら早々に飽きを示して今頃一人インゴしりとりを始めていると思います。
That's so.
はい。
Although I can't say I enjoy being compared to Makina, I guess it's safe to interpret that as an attempt at a compliment. I think I've told you this a few times by now, but you're definitely a unique one, Sachi.
はい、ありがとうございます。
For example, I don't think you'll find many people who will smile happily after essentially being called bizarre to their face. But that said, spending this quiet time alone together isn't so bad on my end either. In fact, it brings back some faint memories of the old days. We used to watch each other like this a lot in that park. I'd look up at Sachi as she soared into the sky in her swing, and she'd look over the bench at me as I started my homework. At this stage in my life, that constant presence at my side doesn't feel as natural as it did back then. That gaze makes it a little harder to relax even. But ask me if I find it unpleasant, and my answer would be a definite no. Just as I'm reaching the end of my book, my attention is caught by the sound of someone rushing noisily down the stairs.
ねえユージ、今日から私たちの肉奴隷になったって本
The fuck are you talking about? What the hell? Our sudden visitor and her bizarre question are too much to process on the fly. Sachi and I look quizzically into each other's faces. Look, woman, you burst into my room, fine, but do me a favor and keep your twisted delusions to yourself. I push myself up off the bed with a few cold words, then deliver a light poke directly to him on his forehead.
だって気になる男の子が奴隷になったなんて話を聞いたらいても立ってもいられないでしょ普通。
Hold on, Amane. I roughly understand what happened here, but where exactly did you pick up this criminally fraudulent misinformation?
それはもちろん私なのよさ。
Another one popped up out of nowhere.
今の話をあんまねにしたら盛りのついた犬みたいに突然走り出したから痛くなる横っ腹を押さえながら頑張ってついてきたのよ。盛りのついた犬ってね。
And where did you hear that story from, Makina?
それはもちろんため息の似合うクロー女のユミちゃんからなのよさ。
To conjecture from what I've heard so far, it seems the offer I communicated to Michiru was badly distorted on its way to Amane, in the classic telephone game style, but it'd be a pain in the ass to try and correct all their misunderstandings one by one, so I guess I'll gather the whole lot of them and explain. Before the story gets even more muddled, let's discuss this as a group.
では私はみちる様と榊さんにお声をかけてきますね。
Yeah, appreciate it. As it turned out, that Sakaki had left the dorm for a while, we ended up waiting for the slightly cooler evening before gathering in the lobby for our little chat. Now that I've got you all together, I've got a few preliminary questions for clarity's sake. Sakaki, what did you tell Makina this afternoon?
私は松島さんから聞いた話をそのままイリスさんに伝えただけよ。
Alright then, Michiru, what did you tell Sakaki?
私はユージが何でも人の頼みを聞くって伝えたはずだけど。
I see, so that's how it is.
なんで私
Because from the sound of things, you're pretty obviously the sole criminal here.
だって何でも言うこと聞くって言ったらエロいこと OK って考えるのが当然じゃね？
No?
だからって肉奴隷はないでしょ。肉奴隷はその考えは甘いのよ。今の若者に必要なのは発想力。常に他人の一歩先を行くことが重要なのよさ。
You're crazy, damn it.
それとこれとは完全に別問題だと思うけど、まあうすうすそんな気はしてたんだけどね。
Smiling wryly, Amania rubs the back of her head in an uncharacteristic gesture of mild embarrassment.
でもリュウジが私たちの頼みを聞くって言ったのは本当の話よね。
Yeah, I did indeed say that.
だから私がユミコに伝えたことは間違いじゃないわけよ。それは分かったけれど、本当に何でもなの？
Well, it has to be something I'm capable of doing, but more or less.
それは当然としても。どうして突然そんなことになったわけ？
It's a little complicated, but to put it simply, I'm doing this for Sachi's sake.
ああ、そういえばさっきもサチの負担を減らしたいとか言ってたもんね。
Michiru shrugs her shoulders, a mildly exasperated expression on her face.
つまりさっちゃんの彼氏になったからにはユウジもメイドさんになると？
Yeah, guess you could put it that way. Although I could quibble about that phrasing, she's got the crucial point down. I'm assuming the role normally reserved for Sachi in this dorm.
よくわからないんだけど、これはそういう話なの？本人がそうだって言ってるんだからそうなんじゃない？だとしたらこれは面白いことになったね。
お兄ちゃんがメイドになるってそんなに面白いことなの？
さすがに肉奴隷とまではいかないまでもユウジに無茶が言えるってことなんだしね。
一応言っとくけどお兄ちゃんはもう殺人のもんだからな。
大丈夫大丈夫、浮気にならないやり方なんていくらでもあるんだから。
I don't agree with that, Amane.
怖え、ビッチの本気怖え。
Probably Machina.
ねえユミコ、もしかしてあんたも何か頼むつもりなの？もちろん操作みたいなことは考えてないけれど、普通の用事は頼むかもしれないわね。
普通ってどんな？
マッサージとか。
ってあんたもやる気満々じゃないのよ。
グフフフフ。あまねなんて完全に中年親父になってるし、いろんな意味で不安だわ。
It is indeed.
なぜだか皆さんとても楽しそうですね。
Even as the atmosphere of our little meeting takes a rapid turn for the dubious, Sachi maintains her utterly unperturbed smile. So anyway, ultimately speaking, I might be taking some of your work from you, Sachi. Is that alright with you?
はい、ゆうくんが決めたことなら私には反対する理由がありません。
I see.
でもサチ、お兄ちゃんを信用するのはいいのだけど今回ばかりは反対しておいた方がいいと思うのよ。
反対ってどうして？
油切った中小企業の課長みたいになってるアマネーの顔を見る限りお兄ちゃんはきっと明日からパンツが乾く暇もなくなると思うのよさ。そうなったらお兄ちゃんの彼女になった殺人としては面白くねえよな。
よくわからないけど、パンツが乾かないなら乾燥機に入れればいいんじゃない？
そっか。殺人はきっと旦那が浮気しても笑顔で許せる物分かりのいい奥さんになんな。
I hadn't anticipated this wild burst of excitement from Amani and company, but at present, Sachi doesn't seem to be harboring any doubts about my behavior. or any curiosity whatsoever, really. But that's alright for now. What really matters is what lies ahead. How Sachi's static patterns of thought will evolve through observing my example. My previous school, when compared to your normal, conventional learning institutions, operated on a decidedly extreme educational philosophy. As a representative example, an instructor once showed us a plain white cup, loudly insisted it was even greener than you fresh-faced little shits, and spent the entire lesson ensuring none of us dared even think otherwise. Those relatively new to the place tended to spend a good deal of time grumbling about how insane all this was. But when the time came and we were dumped out into the field, those who survived eventually came to understand that these hazing sessions were in fact surprisingly meaningful. Point being, when you need to produce results that can't be achieved using ordinary methods, sometimes it's necessary to satisfy unfair demands. And through my steadfast dedication to this principle, I currently find myself playing the role of a devoted maid, serving a capricious master.
ユージ、冷たい飲み物はまだ？
Coming! As Amani reclines indolently on the sofa, I carefully bring over a freshly brewed cup of tea. Since you didn't specify anything in particular, I brought milk tea. Is that acceptable?
あれ、ユージが紅茶ってちょっと意外かも。
Well, unlike Sachi, I don't have a fully stocked supply locker. I ran over and borrowed this from Chizuru's room.
それ、絶対許可取ってないわよね。
Kocha, I think, is like barley tea. I don't know why they translated that into milk tea. No, but that's the price you have to pay for these high-quality Assam leaves. Not easy to get your hands on them lately.
私、アッサムってあまり詳しくないんだけど、飲み方はミルクティーがおすすめなの？
Okay, so it is milk tea. Yeah, compared to something like Darjeeling, Assam tea is pretty strong, both in color and taste. To mellow that out a little, people usually dilute it with milk before drinking. It complements the flavor nicely.
へえ、ユージって紅茶も詳しいんだね。イメージ的にはコーヒー、ブラックでって感じなのに。
Yeah, that's my... that's me, Amane. I do drink coffee more often, yeah. But black tends to upset your stomach. And if I'm drinking something other than water, I usually try to get some sugar intake while I'm at it. As a general rule, I tend to drink my coffee heavily sweetened.
こうやって聞いてみると、実はユージもいろいろと考えてるんだね。
Compared to the fine calorie counting you're always doing, it's hardly anything worth mentioning.
でも、食事はあれだけ質素なんだから不思議よね。
Well, I've been waiting on Amani hand and foot for a while now, but after the way that conversation went yesterday, I guess I should be grateful she hasn't tried any seriously shady orders. Alright, Amani, if you've got any other requests, go ahead and tell me now.
本当に言っちゃっていいの？
If you're going to ask me at some point, might as well get it out of the way now instead of later.
そっかそっか。じゃあお言葉に甘えて、ユージもさっちゃんみたいにメイド服を。
Goodness, Miss Amane, you seem rather fatigued. Do allow me to give you a shoulder rub. Firmly seizing Amane's shoulders as I cut off her sentence, I dig my thumb sharply into the muscles around her neck.
やっぱり嫌がった。
Whatever are you saying, mistress? This is nothing but an earnest expression of concern on my part.
ふーん。まあ、羊っぽいユージの対応が見れたことだし、今回はそういうことにしておいてあげよう。
Thank you very much.
それにしても、ユージ、マッサージも、上手。
Amane smirks in evident satisfaction at my submissive words, but soon enough she's squirming underneath my vigorous shoulder rub. Speculating from what I've seen of Sachi's behavior, there seem to be two methods of coping with problematic requests like this one. Either attempt to interject before the words are fully out of their mouth, or deliberately fail to hear them. Of course, I don't think Sachi's consciously trying to be dishonest, but it's a fact that she's managed to slip past some difficult requests using this sort of plausible deniability technique. But given the absolute nature of the law Sachi's imposed on herself, careless words without any real malice behind them could easily lead to disaster. To live a halfway decent life under such restraints, utilizing these kinds of gray areas is probably an absolute necessity.
なあサッチン、お兄ちゃんが何でも言うことを聞くって言ったのをいいことに、暴食美人の限りを尽くすあの年上、どう思うよ。
それを言うなら傍若無人だと思うけど、ゆうくんもあまねさんも楽しそうだからいいんじゃないかな。
その目、ちゃんと見えてるか？
視力は両目とも 1.5 だよ。
最近の発言を聞いてると、だんだんサッチンのことが心配になってくるのよさ。
それよりマキちゃんはゆうくんに何かをお願いしたりはしないの？
そっか、何もお兄ちゃんはあまねえだけのものじゃなかったのよさ。
ゆうくんはあまねさんだけに言ってたわけじゃないと思うし。
よし、そうと決まったら早速お兄ちゃん奪還作戦を実行するのよさ。
アイマン。
おうおう、あまねえさんよ。若いツバメを囲うで楽しむんもその辺にしときんさいや。
Stop it, Machina. Oh my god. You're so... God, the way she phrased that is so dumb.
そうね。あんまり独り占めしてミチルに呪いの藁人形とか作られても困るし。
そんなの作らないし。
From nowhere in particular, there's an outraged burst of protest, followed immediately by the sound of someone scampering up the stairs. Probably safe to assume a certain nosy airhead was observing our little role-playing session from a fixed point in the shadows.
じゃあ前菜の了解も取ったことだし、次は私たちもお兄ちゃんタイムをエンジョイするのよさ。
でもマキちゃん、ゆうくんと一緒に何をするつもりなの？
サッチも一緒なら今日は勉強でもすっか。
You studying? Who are you?
チルチルがテストで100点取った時みたいな顔されると、いくらハートの強さが売りの私でも傷つくぞ。
だって普段あんだけ勉強嫌いって言ってる子がいきなりだもん。そりゃ驚くって。
あまねえ、私はやっと気づいたのよさ。
気づいた？
そう、つまらないことにいつまでもこだわっていると、どこかの誰かさんみたいに生き遅れになってしまうって。くしゅっ！誰？年齢のことで私の噂をしてるのは。
誰のことを言ってるのかは分かったけど、どうにもうさんくさい気がするのは私だけ。
Well, whatever the reason may be, trying to improve your weaknesses is an admirable thing. I'll gladly help out.
よし、お兄ちゃんゲットなのよさ。
で、本当に勉強するとしてどこでやるの？私の部屋？
もちろん、学校の教室でやるのよ。
どうして教室？
ハマネの部屋だとすぐに副交感神経が刺激されて眠くなっちゃうからな。
I kinda get you too, Machina.
すごい、なんか本当にやる気だ。
マキちゃん自身が言い出したことですし、ここは本人の気が変わらないうちに実行してしまうのが得策かもしれません。
Sounds about right. Although our study session began with this relatively auspicious show of determination, it was less than an hour before the group's attention began to wander. In the end, I was forced to endure an hour-long session of strip old maid on a whim of Machina's.
結局ユージは一回も負けなかったわね。
I'm just that good, Amane. As we make our way back to the dorm, Amane grumbles a few resentful words, arms folded behind her head. Any card game comes down to how well you can read your opponents. When you've got the hang of that, the odds of finishing at the very bottom get pretty low.
でもあれだけバカ勝ちされるとイカサマしてると思われても仕方がないのよ。
Incidentally, Amane, you tend to leave the card you want to get rid of right in the middle of your hand. And Machina, your expression always makes it crystal clear when you get the old maid.
あっちゃ私ってばそんなことになってたんだ。
At my old school, cards were the most convenient form of entertainment by far. Couldn't help but pick up an eye for tells. Even after I started at Ichigaya, many of the regular employees I worked with on the job were major poker lovers, including a few who throw their car keys into the pot with perfectly composed faces.
おかげで私はたくさん脱がされてしまいました。
お兄ちゃんは今自分の彼女を脱がせまくった罪悪感に打ちひしがれているはずなのよ。
Personally, I think Sachi's losing streak had more to do with the way you people kept asking her which one's the old maid at the end of the round. Of course, Sachi would answer with perfect honesty every time, so she invariably ended up stuck with the Joker in the end.
だってユージの前で脱ぎたくなかったんだもん。
You've already done that countless times in the frickin' common route, Amane. She prances around completely naked and shoves her breasts against me at every opportunity. But she is self-conscious about this? Sometimes women are just incomprehensible.
何にせよお見苦しいものをお見せしてしまってすみませんでした。
No problems on that count. Might have mentioned this before, but my principle is not to refuse what's offered to me.
そういう割には私に冷たいんだよね。
I think it's only natural to get suspicious over that kind of that's such a hard word. Gratuitous service? Gratuitous? I think that's how you say that. But as a general rule, men tend to enjoy watching their girlfriends strip down to her underwear, and I'm no exception.
ありがとうございます。
そういうことならユージの彼女じゃない私とマキナはここらでおいとまさせてもらいましょうか。
Before anyone can respond to Amani's sudden declaration, she grabs Makina's hand and pulls a step ahead of us.
なんか用事か？
用事ってわけじゃないんだけど、あんたに新しく覚えたおやつでも作ってあげようと思ってさ。
なんかしんねえけどアマニーが優しい。さては給料日だな。
Nah, she's just being self-conscious, Makina.
いや、学生は給料とかもらわないから。
That's also true.
お兄ちゃんみたいにバイトしてるわけじゃねえしな。
わかってるならなんで聞いた？
Not in this route, Amanu.
そういうわけだから、いろいろわがままに付き合ってくれてありがとう、ユージ。
Fine by me. I was sort of expecting you to drag me around all day, to be honest.
予定が空いたなら、さっちゃんとデートしてくればいいじゃない。
A date?
そう、せっかく恋人同士になったんだから、デートくらいして当然でしょ？
I see. Amani seems well versed in romantic maneuvering, so if she says so, maybe this is the right timing. Alright, Sachi. How about we go on a date?
はい、わかりました。
相変わらず即答だな。
さっちゃんだって女の子だもん。好きな人とデートできて嬉しくないはずがないわよね。
私はただゆうくんがしたいと言ったことにうなずくだけですから。
なるほどね。
Watching Sachi squirm, Amane smirks suggestively to no one in particular. From that expression, I'm willing to bet she's plotting something. Better keep a careful eye on that one.
じゃあユージ、後のことは任せたからね。
They're gonna follow us, aren't they? Right.
サッチンもガツンと決めてくるのよ。
よくわからないけど、ありがとう、マキちゃん。
それじゃあ帰ってきたらいろいろ聞かせてよね。
And with those words, Amani hurries off with Makina in tow. And there they go.
行ってしまいましたね。
Well, Guess we may as well go on this date then.
はい、よろしくお願いします。
Sachi nods obediently, a bright smile on her face. All perfectly typical Sachi, but today that very normality troubles me slightly. It makes me wonder if there's really any feeling behind the pleased tone of her voice. If that smile is completely hollow. For the time being, let's change out of our uniforms and meet up in the dorm lobby.
わかりました。
It's not true. I watch Sachi make her way back to the dorm, trying my best to reassure myself.
すみません。少し遅くなってしまいました。
Alright, before this continues on, I will be splitting the part over here. So this will be an end to the episode.
セーブしますか？
I am feeling a bit peckish. Right now it's 3:48, so I'm gonna be making some snacks before I continue on. I was gonna do some DDR today since this is Wednesday, and Wednesday is usually my DDR segment. If you guys don't know what DDR is, it's basically like a dance machine rhythm game kind of thing. I have a pad connected to my PC, and it just plays a custom program. But yeah, I think I'm gonna be doing one more episode of this, and after that, I might play some more Digimon Survive. Digimon Survive has been kinda making me neglect Grisaia a bit. That's why I have to do Grisaia in like a single sitting right now. Don't worry for people on YouTube, you guys will be fine. But I do feel bad for people on Patreon, like I said. Man, I'm really enjoying Grisaia though. Like, Digimon Survive, it has its moments, but my goodness, it doesn't appreciate your time. I feel like the characterization in this game is very well done. In Digimon Survive, there are just so many flawed characters that you don't give a fuck about. Yeah, I said that. Alright, this is about Grisaia and not about Digimon Survive. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Give it a like if you like it, and subscribe if you haven't. New videos will be up on Patreon for early access. And yeah, I'll be back in a bit. See ya!